You may come to this point in your life where you think everything sucks. My job really is bad, horrible. My boss is horrible. Everything is horrible. I'm horrible. I'm not good enough. And when we come to that point in our lives, everything is bad. We feel really bad and we wake up feeling really hopeless, really desperate, and really wanting to change things. But we feel powerless to change things because we do one of two things when we are in that negative rut. What do you do, or what can you do when you are stuck in an emotional funk and you feel absolutely unable to go through it? Wherever you are in your journey, today I just want to say that I might not fully understand where you are. I might not fully know how that feels like. But I just want you to know that you are not alone in this journey, and that as you go through this day by day, you will come out a different person. So hold on to that hope. Today, I wanted to share 3 principles that can help you to get out of that emotional funk. But before we look at those 3 principles, let's look at why that happens. Why does this happen? Why do we get into this emotional funk? We get into that because of 2 key reasons. The first one is because we blame ourselves, and the second one is because we blame others. We either blame the organization, we blame our bosses, or we blame others. Blaming yourself is attractive because you end up thinking about all the things that are bad with you, and sometimes that can be true. We are not perfect, and it's easy to look at all our flaws instead of the strengths that you have. But blaming ourselves puts power outside of ourselves, and we start thinking about how we cannot change things rather than how we can. When we blame others, we go into a bottomless rut where we end up trying to prove to ourselves that everything is wrong but you. This shifts us away from a response oriented thinking to a cause oriented thinking. We start thinking why, rather than thinking about what we can actually do to have the power to change the situation. That isn't helpful at all. Now, since you know these 2 different reasons why this happens, then what can you actually do to help? There are 3 principles. The first one is to practice self-compassion. Very often, when you think about what's wrong with your situation, it's easy to have all these negative thoughts that come. So you might think, well, life sucks. My boss is really horrible. My friend is really bad for doing this to me. When you do that, it is tempting to get that thought and feeling associated with who you are. It's very easy to identify and to fuse your feelings and your thoughts together with your actions. In acceptance and commitment therapy, Russ Harris, the author of this great book called The Happiness Trap, talks about how we can practice self compassion by diffusing or taking away thoughts and observing them for what they are, accepting thoughts for what they are. Thoughts are just thoughts, they do not have to determine your actions. You can do this by thinking about a recent thought that you've been telling yourself. So you might be saying, I am not good enough. Or you might be saying, life sucks. Diffusion is about saying these words. I'm having the thought that life sucks, for example. To take it a step further, you can go on to say, I notice that I'm having the thought that life sucks. When you do this, you start putting distance between your thought and your eventual response. This helps you to have self compassion for what you're thinking and what you're feeling, rather than identifying too strongly with it and allowing it to influence your behaviors. The next aspect is self forgiveness. Very often, when we self flagellate and we flog ourselves for certain mistakes that we have, we end up feeling that we are not deserving of any love or compassion. Recently, I was having a lot of trouble with my job, and very fortunately, another job offer came. But I rejected it. You might be asking, why? Why do I reject a great job offer when I'm facing so much difficulties with my current job? Well, the reason is, if I dig deep, is because I didn't feel like I deserved better. My thinking was that I wasn't good enough for this job. And I had identified very strongly with all the mistakes that I had made in my previous role, that I had forgotten what was good about me. Today's self-forgiveness is about forgiving yourself for what has happened in the past. For that, a writing exercise can be very helpful. Be specific about what you're forgiving yourself for. Write a letter to yourself, forgiving yourself for all the past mistakes that you have made. You have heard this many times. None of us are perfect. But it's in our imperfections that we realize that we are human and that we can improve from those mistakes. Rather than framing them as mistakes, frame them as learning opportunities. Ask yourself, what can I learn from this? What can I learn from this? That's the second aspect. The third aspect is to think about self acceptance. Self acceptance is really difficult, isn't it, today? Especially when you look at things like social media, where everyone seems to be living a better life than you tend to compare yourself with everybody else. And it's very hard to accept where you are, what you're doing, and it's easy to think that there's always something better out there. Today, self acceptance starts with self love. Ask yourself this question: do you love yourself? Why? When I first started therapy, one of the first exercises my therapist told me to do was to write down a letter of love to myself. I was thinking to myself, why are you asking me to do that? That sounds ridiculous. Like, a letter of love? Are you kidding me? I paid so much money for you to tell me to write a letter of love. But as I wrote that, it began to help me see what was good about myself, the things that I could show love for. Today, why not try writing that? Under the title, What is Worth Celebrating About Me? Write about all the qualities that you are proud of yourself for and how you've shown them in the past. Self acceptance is also about realizing that you have the power to change things. In this Harvard Business Review guide, there is a great article on how you can move from cause-oriented thinking to response-oriented thinking. And there are 4 questions that might be helpful for you. So the first question is, what features of the situation can I potentially improve? This improves your sense of control over the situation. Secondly, your impact. What sort of positive impact can I potentially have on what happens next? Thirdly, it is about the breadth. How big is the issue really? And then you think, how can I contain the negatives of the situation and generate currently unseen positives? Lastly, the duration. What can I do to begin addressing the problem now? When you start thinking about self acceptance, it's easy to be stuck in a rut where you think that you have no power over the situation. Well, you do. You absolutely do. In closing, I want to share a quick story. In August 2018, I was volunteering in Xi'an, China, with a home that was taking in abandoned orphans. These children had been found in rubbish dumps, on street corners, and left on doorsteps. Very often I thought about what it felt like to be told, Mommy will come back, but Mommy never does. So, somewhat insensitively, one afternoon I asked one of the boys that I was helping about how it felt and whether he missed Mommy. The afternoon I asked him, do you miss Mommy? And this boy with a mild cognitive difficulty looked at me and said, no, I don't. I thought I heard wrongly, so I asked him again, do you miss Mommy? And he said, no, I don't. I have friends and family here. Later on, when I went to his room, I saw a bunch of toys. And on his bed, there was a teddy bear. And below his bed, there was a suitcase. In the eyes of the world, he had nothing, but in his eyes, he had everything. Because he had friends and family. My friends, today that story reminds us that maybe in the eyes of yourself, your situation might be really bad. And whatever you're going through right now, I hope it gets better. But perhaps it's also helpful to look at what you have by practicing some self compassion for yourself, by practicing some self forgiveness, and by practicing, most importantly, some self acceptance. The question is, do you love yourself? I hope this helps, and I look forward to hearing from you about what was your most important takeaway. Thank you.